Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
30 years ago, the U.S. national debt was under $1 trillion, and at that time it was considered a crisis. Today, the national debt is 14 times larger. Will the new year put government spending on a more fiscally responsible path? Steve Moore is the senior economic writer for the Wall Street Journal, and David Buckner is an adjunct professor at Columbia University. David, to you first, Happy New Year, and welcome here. Am I living in a dream world if I think that people like Senator Paul and Senator Lee and the Tea Party members of the House of Representatives are going to tame the federal beast?
Well, there is some fantasy to that, because many people, when they get there and they have the promises and there's the commitment, they get engaged in the process and they start the backroom deals. And that's a big concern. Although you're listening to two that seem to be pretty fervent in what they've suggested that they're not only going to do for their constituency, but they're going to do for America. All
right. So, Steve Moore, you're not only the senior economic writer, you're a pretty smart guy in the world of politics. In fact, I can't tell where you are. I think you're in Florida, but somehow you're going to be speaking to members of Congress soon on the Constitution and Economics 101. Question, do you think that Republicans will try to co-opt these defenders of the Constitution, like the two senators-elect from whom we just heard, who just preceded you and David on the show?
Well, first of all, Judge, I was just so impressed with Rand Paul and Senator Lee. You know, I never thought I'd see two people make you and I look like moderates, but those guys are going to be fantastic. And I can't wait for them to be sworn in. And by the way, there are about 6 or 7 just like them. Right. Now, your question, will they be co-opted? You know, I know, everyone knows that the powers that be in Washington, of course they're going to try to co-opt these people. The first meetings they're going to have, they're going to say, look, you join the club. You go along to get along. And the real question, you know, let's do this segment 3 months from now and see whether these guys have lost their fervent power. The one thing I'm going to tell these freshman Republicans when I speak to them tomorrow is you've got to hold firm. You've got to hold firm as a unit, and you've got to defend the Constitution and start cutting the budget right now.
Well, 2 previous Republican leaders in the Senate who were considered conservatives in their day, Trent Lott said, quote, we don't need a lot of Jim DeMint disciples. As soon as they get here, we need to co-opt them. And Bill Frist said the same thing. So does anybody stick to their guns? Do we need somebody as fervent as Rand Paul, as fervent as Mike Lee, or should we expect that they will give in?
Well, look, I was very much involved with the 1994 freshman class. You remember when we had that big Republican revolution. And these guys had the same kind of fervor. And what happened, Judge, was for the first couple of years, they stuck to their guns. We did the balanced budget. We did welfare reform. We did capital gains tax cut. We made Congress live by the same rules as the rest of us. But what happened, Judge, you know this better than anybody. Power corrupts, and the longer the Republicans held power, unfortunately, the more they became corrupted by the process.
David, you don't want the ceiling on the national debt to go up, do you? No, but you don't want it to go up by as much as a penny.
No, but there is a reality about that, and they're positioning it as the death of America if it doesn't go up. On the other hand, there is no plan.
Do you buy that argument?
No, but there's no plan.
We have to borrow this money, that we have to spend it?
But there is no plan, and they don't position a plan. And the American people have pushed hard to say, wait, we want a plan. If you're going to raise that debt ceiling, you make sure that there is a plan to cut or to make sure we stay within our means. And they haven't done that.
What would the plan be if they don't raise the debt ceiling? If they don't raise the debt ceiling, what will happen? And how can the Republicans make a proposal that will make what will happen seem reasonable?
The senator identified something that I thought was clairvoyant, if you will, as to what we should do. Number one, we must remember. Remember is the most important word in the English language. And the problem is it wasn't just about November. So the people have got to continue to push the Rand Pauls of the world and say, wait, hold on. Remember what you were elected to do. And then secondly, we have to spend as we go. If you can't spend, if you can't take the money that you've got and use it as you go, then you shouldn't be extending beyond that.
Steve Moore, do the Republicans have the fortitude to cut across the board? I'm talking about entitlements and defense as well as earmarks.
You know, they don't need a saw. They need a chainsaw. They need a hatchet. They need to cut these programs by about 25 or 30%. And, you know, when I was listening to you talk, Judge, it's interesting, isn't it, that in this terrible recession we've lived through, families and households and businesses have cut back on their spending. They've tightened their belt. Government hasn't done that. In fact, I met with Paul Ryan of Wisconsin last week. He was saying that a lot of these agencies in the last 2 years have had budget increases
you met
of
with
70 or 80%.
Okay, you met with Paul Ryan. I think he's the number 2 or 3 ranking person in the new Republican leadership. Okay, what are they going to do?
He will be the number.
What is the Republican leadership in the House going to do? Are they going to tell their members not to vote to raise that debt ceiling, or to raise the debt ceiling only if there's enough Christmas tree ornaments that come with it?
Oh, the power structure will say you got to raise the debt ceiling. But I'm with Rand Paul and others. You've got to basically, if we're going to raise that debt ceiling, we have got to get a balanced budget. We've got to get a path to a balanced budget. And we have to have automatic spending cuts to bring the budget down. That's the only terms by which I, as a senator or congressman, would vote for an increase in the debt ceiling. By the way, Judge, when I arrived in Washington in 1982, the national debt was $1.2 trillion. Now we're at $14 trillion.
Yeah.
I mean, it is amazing how much we've increased this debt.
Isn't it immoral for the government to spend money today and impose the burden on generations?
Well, not only that, not only spending it, but we've got the trillions and trillions of dollars on entitlements. The promises to pay. They don't look at the basic balance sheet. The simplicity of it should be clear to anybody who understands how to balance a checkbook.
David Buckner, Steve Moore, thanks very much for joining us. We will be right back.
Thank you, Judge.
Good to see you.
Obama extended his vacation for an extra day. Glenn actually agrees with him on this one. So he'll be back live tomorrow, and he's got a lot to say. Glenn just needed an extra day to stock up on chalk for 2011. Set your DVR now, tomorrow, 5 p.m.